Hey, so when I first started playing football, I was way too skinny. Something my college football coach would say is that thin doesn't win in football. And I could confirm this is true because when I first started playing football and I was super skinny, I'd get injured a bunch and just struggled overall with the game. And in martial arts, it's different if you plan on competing because the person's going to be the same weight as you most of the time. But if you're a practitioner who doesn't want to get bullied in the gym, weight also matters. But over the course of my 8-year football career, I did tons of research on how to gain weight, and I got a bunch of experience on the subject and just testing different things out, seeing what worked and didn't work. But in this video, I'm going to discuss 6 of the most effective things I did to gain weight. So with me, it actually did me better to eat clean than do something called a dirty bulk. For those of you that don't know, a dirty bulk is just when you eat like just whatever just to gain weight. So you eat like Pop-Tarts and pizza and all that. And I did try it, but it didn't work out for me because if I did something like eat pancakes for breakfast, when it came during lunchtime, my stomach would still hurt from all the crap I ate that morning, and I wouldn't be able to eat lunch because of it. And by dinner, my appetite would still be kind of ruined. So it actually made me eat less when I was dirty bulking just because of the stomach pain it gave me. This is just something I experienced personally because, I'm lactose intolerant and also I just don't digest bread the best unless it's sourdough. But I also don't think this is good for athletes because someone who ate 500 calories worth of pizza crust for their carbs before practice versus someone who ate 500 calories for carbs worth of rice and fruit. I feel like the person who ate the rice and fruit is going to move a lot better and, a lot more faster than someone who's just has a bunch of pizza crust staying in their stomach. And also the person who ate rice and fruit is just going to feel a lot better and probably not only physically, but also maybe even more mentally sharp. And this video is for athletes trying to gain weight, not just people who are trying to become a big bulky bodybuilder. So this is just something I recommend doing. So if you're in the process of gaining weight and you want to build that weight in muscle and not fat, you kind of have to lift weights in my opinion, or at least do some form of resistance training. For example, I had a teammate in high school who was in the process of gaining weight, like he was eating a bunch of extra food. He was also drinking 3 protein shakes a day, which in my opinion is a little bit too much. So he was definitely eating enough, but he wasn't lifting as much as he should be. So because of that, he kind of got a little bit fat. But when I was gaining weight in high school and I was eating a bunch and also I was making sure to lift, the weight I put on was actually pretty decent. And me and him were doing the same thing. It's just I was lifting weights during the off season and he wasn't. And for athletes, when I say lift weights, I don't mean lift weights in the way a bodybuilder would lift weights. Something I learned from Faraz Zahabi, George St. Pierre's coach, is that as an athlete, you should train movements and not muscles. And this makes sense because you squat as an athlete, or you pick something up as an athlete, or you push something as an athlete. You don't just stand there with big bulky muscles. So an example of doing this would be in the gym, you should be squatting or deadlifting or pressing instead of doing something like a bicep curl or a leg extension, because that would be training your biceps or training your quads and not the actual movement. But it does actually have its place in my opinion. Like recently I did some bicep curls because I was having some elbow pain. So I did some bicep curls just to strengthen the area and also just get some blood flow into the injured area. Or an example to where you would do leg extensions is if you hurt your knee and you're doing it to rehab it, or your quad is a specifically weak area and you need to strengthen it with a specific exercise. So exercise that train the muscle do have its place also. But I also think it's better to train movements instead of muscles when trying to gain weight because I don't know, this is bro science right now, but I think there's also studies to back it up. But you just feel like more of a man after you do something like a rope pull or a pull up or a kettlebell swing than when you do something like a tricep extension or, a lateral raise. Like it just hits more muscles and I just feel like it shocks your central nervous system more to where your body's going to be like, okay, we need to get bigger to handle the stuff that this person does. Like there's definitely studies that show that a squat increases your testosterone more than, a tricep extension. But if you're new to the gym, just any kind of lifting in my opinion is good. You don't have to overthink it at first. Third thing I want to talk about is that I hear a lot of people say, no matter what I do, I just can't gain weight. Like they'll say I eat a ton, but for some reason I just can't get any bigger. And I know this is BS because I actually used to be one of these people. And once I started eating in a calorie surplus, I actually did start to gain weight, even though I was what they call a hard gainer. This kind of brings me to the first point. Like a lot of people say I ate a whole pizza for dinner, like that's like 1,000 calories. And it is, but usually during the day, they don't really eat anything other than that pizza at dinner time. So in turn, if you need 2,000 calories to maintain your weight, you only ate like 1,500. And that's kind of what happened with me. Once I started tracking my calories on this app called Calory, I kind of realized I wasn't eating enough, even though I usually would eat a big dinner or something like that. So once I started just sectioning off my meals, eating like a little bit more during breakfast and lunch and a little bit less during dinner and, a little bit of snacks in between, it didn't feel like I was was eating more, but I was actually eating a lot more based on what I was seeing with the calorie app. So yeah, like really the only thing you need to actually gain weight is just to make sure you're eating more calories than the calories you burn. So if you are trying to gain weight, I'd go on something called the calorie calculator, where you just put in your information, like how often you work out, your height and weight, and what gender you are, because it matters for how much calories you burn. But I'll just see how much the calorie calculator says to eat to maintain your weight every day, and just make sure with something like the calorie app that I mentioned, or really any other app is fine, just make sure you're eating a little bit more. And I'm not saying to eat 1,000 calories more than your maintenance calories, but I'm just saying eat like 200 calories more, 300, or even 500, just to make sure you're eating more calories than you burn. I'll link a calorie calculator app that I trust in the description below, by the way. But yeah, most of the time people who say they're hard gainers and can't gain weight, they're just not eating enough, even if they are eating a big dinner. I just want to say again, if you are an athlete, I don't recommend going too far above your calorie maintenance. I just recommend going like a decent amount, but you know, just nothing too crazy to where you're gonna feel like a blob. So a lot of people think at the gym you get bigger, and you do get a pump where you feel temporarily bigger and your muscles are inflated with blood and you kind of feel like a beast. That's usually the time where everyone takes their gym mirror selfie. But in reality, at the gym, where you're like tearing down your muscles, you're actually getting smaller and weaker. Usually if you weigh yourself after a gym session, you've lost weight. The time where you actually get bigger and you actually get stronger is when you're sleeping. That's why it's so important to get the right amount of sleep, and you also get a good quality sleep. I actually have 2 videos on how to sleep better. I'll link them both in the description below. But yeah, there's a bunch of good stuff in both of those videos, so make sure you check them out. Alright, 5th thing is creatine. When I first bought my first tub of creatine, some of my friends actually made fun of me, being like, Gabe, you know this doesn't actually work, right? But I didn't listen to them, and when I did start taking it, I actually saw there was a noticeable difference in how much weight I was lifting. And also, just when I looked in the mirror, there was actually a noticeable difference in how big and muscular I was. Also, this was at the time I was playing football, so I also felt a lot more athletic too. Like, I felt like I could run faster, I didn't get tired as easily, I could jump higher, and I was just like more reactive, because there's actually a lot of studies that show that creatine also affects your brain and makes it work better also. Some people even suggest that people who don't do sports or don't exercise also take creatine. And it didn't just help me, I also had a teammate who was also a cornerback on the team, and before he was benching 275, which is really good for a corner. He was also around 180 at the time, but later during the off season I saw he was benching 315 pounds, not just for a 1 rep max but for reps. And I asked him, bro, what are you doing differently? Like, you got super strong out of nowhere. And he was like, bro, that creatine is magic. And around that time I actually stopped taking creatine, just because I kind of got a little bit lazy with it. So that was a good reminder, like, damn, yeah, I need to start taking my creatine again. But a lot of people are actually scared of taking creatine. Like, there's some myths that say that makes you lose your hair, but it's actually one of the most researched supplements, and it's like incredibly safe to take. All it does is just hydrate your muscles a little bit more. I'm gonna be honest, I don't have enough knowledge on it to explain it properly or explain why it's gonna be safe, but there's a fitness YouTuber who's really science-based called Jeff Nippard that explained it in one of his videos, so I'll make sure to link his video on creatine in the description below. I recommend checking that out if you're still on the edge of taking creatine. But of course, if you are skeptical, that's a good thing. Like, it is kind of sus just taking a white powder into your body, but as an overthinker myself, I promise you it's nothing crazy. All it is just hydrates your muscles a little bit more. Now, last thing is just making sure you're hydrated. When MMA fighters or boxers or wrestlers are trying to lose weight, what they do is they get rid of the water in their bodies so that they're at a lighter weight. So the opposite is also true if you're trying to maintain your weight or put on weight. Like, just making sure you're fully hydrated is just one way to make sure you're at your max potential. I heard someone describe it as, you know, it's like a sponge that's dry versus a sponge that's soaked, or like a grape is heavier than a raisin, even though they're technically the same size. It's just one's fully hydrated, one's not. And this is especially important if you're an athlete involved in contact sports like football, lacrosse, Muay Thai, boxing, Jujitsu, wrestling, just anything like that where you're going to be hitting your head, because there's actually a thing called like your cerebral fluid, which is like, there's your brain and then there's your skull, and in between is like the fluid inside of your brain, and that stops when you get hit. It stops your brain from smacking into your skull. Like, that causes a concussion. That's actually why they say people who cut a lot of weight get knocked out easier, because since they're more dehydrated, there's less fluid protecting their brain. And when I was playing football, there's actually a teammate of mine who was the nicest person ever, but he got concussion and he ended up fainting, and I think he went into a coma, and he didn't come to school for like a whole week afterwards. But we actually had some trainers come in and explain what happened, and they said that since he was severely dehydrated, he just got like a really bad concussion. So they just came in to speak with us and just talk about how it's super important to drink enough water and all of that. Also, there has been some football players who've died of heat exhaustion. So yeah, just hydration, super important. Also, you just feel a lot better when you're hydrated, like you feel more physically ready and just mentally sharp. But it's not just drinking a bunch of water. It's also making sure you get enough minerals and electrolytes in you too, so that your body can actually retain the water. That's why it's good to take something like electrolytes. I personally use Santa Cruz Paleo electrolytes. These are some new ones I got. My dad got me them for Christmas. But it does cost $30 for 30 servings, which really is only $1 per glass, which is much cheaper than the Gatorade. But I know for a college student that could be pretty expensive. So another alternative is just buying like a big thing of coconut water from Costco. Like you buy a box of it for not that expensive. And what I do is I just add some Himalayan pink salt. What Andrew Huberman does, the neuroscientist, is that he just adds pink salt to water and just drink it straight, which is another option. But yeah, just making sure you not only get enough water in you, you also get the right minerals and electrolytes in you too. Alright, so these are just 6 things that really helped me. Usually at the end of the videos, and I want to discuss the points that really helped me, I'll highlight them out. But honestly, in this video, all 6 tips really helped me a lot, and I recommend doing all of them if you're trying to gain weight. I'll probably make other videos going into more detail about each point, but yeah, this was just a basic overview of 6 things I recommend starting to do. So yeah, this video is mainly for people trying to gain weight, and if you are skinny right now and you also do martial arts or planning to do martial arts, I recently made a video on 3 tips I recommend skinny people thinking about starting martial arts, or skinny people already doing martial arts should know. So I recommend checking that out. I'll link it somewhere here. And if you're new to the channel, I hope you subscribe. But if you are trying to gain weight, I hope you try some of the stuff I suggest, and if you do, I hope it helps. But thank you for watching my video. I'll see you in the next one.